I want to thank you both for meeting me here at Frogville Studio today. Now, I detect a bit of an accent. Where are you both from originally?
I'm from a little town called Red Springs outside of Tyler, Texas, which is East Texas.
And I'm from Big Spring, which is far west Texas. So.
All right. And then is that where you were the other day when I called and you were like, yeah, I'm at my grandma's house.
Yes.
Having cornbread and soup.
Yes.
Can you call me back?
Yes, that was where we were, indeed.
East Texas.
And that was the best cornbread and soup. If you had been there, I was kind of hoping that you could tell.
Right. I picked up on that.
Yeah.
You've both played quite a bit in Austin. Is Austin the origin of 100 Year Flood?
Yes.
And there was a different lineup in the early days, right?
Yes, there was. Myself and my brother, who he's also in 100 Year Flood. He's the drummer. We were in a band called the Sharecroppers in Austin for a few years. And basically that band kind of dissolved, and we had this gig in Denton. And some of the members of the Sharecroppers were like, we don't want to do that gig. And then some of us were like, well, we do want to do it. And Felecia used to get up and sing with the Sharecroppers some. And so we were like, well, we'll go do it, And so we went and played the gig. And the people that were at that gig became 100 Year Flood. That was 10 years ago.
Now, I've seen you play live, and you two are totally out in front, A-type personalities. And your brother and Kendra, they seem completely laid back, kind of hanging out in the background. What's going on there? Did you two get more food as a child? Or what is that?
I think maybe that has a lot to do with why we are also a couple, is because we are very similar in that way. And Jim and Kendra are very similar in that way. Jim and Kendra are very, they're not just quiet all the time. They have opinions. And they're very friendly folks, but, they neither one of them sings, and neither one of them ever have, really. So I think that's just kind of a part of their style, is to just sort of kind of kick back. I play whenever I play with other bands and stuff too, whenever I'm not singing, I kind of have that way about me as well.
We are very different personalities, though, and it's good. It works good.
And I think it's a part of our job, as the singers. Some bands have one front person, and with us, it's kind of more like the two of us are kind of a tandem, And I think it's always kind of been a part of our thing, because we're the ones who have to really, be friendly with the audience and stuff like that. So we've developed it over time as well.
And we have the microphones.
Right.
Sometimes to our own detriment.
It's very much a family affair, isn't it?
Yes.
Kendra and Jim are married. You're married.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
And so what dynamic does that play in the way you do your music?
Well, I would say the most important dynamic has just been the commitment, the feeling of commitment. Even through years when times were lean, and it seemed like success was somewhere far off in the distance, we all were very connected because of being a family. I see bands, I work with bands all the time in the studio, that, the people are different and they come from different places, and in the face of adversity, any one of them could bail at any moment, and not really have anything emotional or anything wrapped up in it. But with us, because we are family, we've really been tight-knit and have stuck together through the years.
So how do you manage the fact that, you're engineering, you're touring, you're writing music, you're doing all these things, and you have kids? How do you manage your time?
Well, I think everybody's pretty busy in this day and age, no matter what you're doing. It just so happens that we've been very stubborn in that we want to only do what it is that we like to do. I don't want to dig a ditch. I would rather be busy, working in the studio. Felecia teaches voice lessons, and we do all these things that have to do with music, because music is what we have loved since we were children.
Right.
So at the end of the day, when we draw our last breath, is how do we want to look back on our time here,
So, Felecia, what is your musical background? Because I've read a bunch about it, but I'm not sure exactly how you came to sing like that.
Okay. Well, my father was an incredible singer, and my parents divorced when I was 9, but I had the influence up until that point. And my grandfather played the fiddle really amazingly, and I think I came about it through my genes. But I also was just always interested in it, even when I was a tiny little girl. You know, I was 5 years old, and I knew all the words to Elvis's songs, you know, and performed them. And then I started entering talent shows and things like that when I was about 10 or 11, and singing in front of audiences and traveling all the time. And then I started doing musical theater, and then when I got to college, I was in vocal performance and had a scholarship to sing, and started doing little opera, you know, which helped my range, I think, a lot. As far as rock and roll is concerned, I came about that like in my late 20s. And
so how did that happen?
I moved next door. When I moved to Austin, I moved next door to a rock and roll band who needed a backup singer.
That'll do it.
And it worked out perfect, because when I moved from Dallas, I was moving away from the musical theater, from traveling and doing shows, you know, musical theater shows, and I knew I wanted to start getting into like blues and rock and roll and country, and so I wanted to do that, and I moved to Austin to do that, and I ended up moving right next door to someone who needed me right away, you know, and it worked out perfect.
I grew up in a place where there was a really rich music environment, so I could walk down to the corner pub and basically go catch Ani DeFranco at an open mic, or I could go see John McLaughlin and the Mahavishnu Orchestra sitting as close as we are, Stanley Clarke, people like that. In the old days, I guess, back when Blue Rodeo was playing a lot, Sarah McLachlan would open for them, so that's a while back. But that really had a big impact on my ear for music, and so I'm wondering, what were you listening to when you were younger, and how did that affect what you're doing now? Because I hear a lot of influences being played in what you produce.
Yeah. My sister, I had an older sister, so she had just about every album that was out, you know, Aerosmith, Rolling Stones, Bob Dylan, you know, you name it. And then my father, he was more into like Willie Nelson, Johnny Cash, Roy Orbison, and you know, that whole style of music. And my mother, she was all into the gospel. So I mean, I pretty much had the influence from everyone. But I wore out the records, you know, Rolling Stones, Tom Petty, Aerosmith, Toys in the Attic. I mean, I played 100 million times.